Well, today we're carrying on a reading of Mark's Gospel, chapter number 5. And in this there are two main stories, the first of which is Jesus dealing with a demon-possessed man, and secondly, his demonstration of his power over not only demons but and disease, but also death, as he brings a little maiden girl back to life. Let's read together. Mark chapter number 5. So they arrived at the other side of the lake, in the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came to him out of the cemetery to meet him. This man lived among the burial caves and could no longer be restrained, even with chains. Whenever he was put into chains or shackles, as he often was, he snapped the chains from off his wrist and smashed the buckles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Day and night he wandered around among the burial caves and the hills, howling and cutting himself with sharp stones. When Jesus was still some distance away, the man saw him and ran to greet him. He bowed low before him, and with a shriek he screamed, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In the name of God, I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had already said to the spirit, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many inside this man." Then the evil spirits begged him not to send them into some distant place. There happened to be a herd of pigs nearby, feeding on the hillside. "Send us into those pigs," the spirits begged. "Let us enter them." So Jesus gave them permission. The evil spirits came out of the man and entered into the pigs, and the entire herd of about 2,000 pigs plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned in the water. The herdsmen from the nearby town and the surrounding countryside spread the news as they ran. People rushed to see what had happened. A crowd gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting, clothed fully, perfectly sane, and all were afraid. Then they who had seen what had happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs. And the crowd began pleading with Jesus to go away and leave them alone. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus said, "No. Go home to your family and tell them the thing that the Lord has done for you, and how merciful he has been." So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began to proclaim the great things that Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed at what he told them. Jesus got into a boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd had gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and, pleading fervently, he said, "My little daughter is dying. Please, come and lay your hands on her. Heal her so she can live." Jesus went with him and the people. They crowded round about him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them, but had got no better. In fact, she had got worse. She heard about Jesus, and so she came, and behind him in the crowd she touched his robe, for she thought to herself, "If I can just touch his robe, I will be healed." Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out of him. And he turned round to the crowd and said, "Who touched my robe?" The disciples said, "Look at the size of the crowd pressing round you. How can you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But he, looking round to see who had done it, then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell on her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, "Daughter, Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." While he was still speaking to her, the messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. They told him, "Your daughter is dead. There is no use troubling the teacher now." But Jesus overheard, and he said to them, "Be not afraid, just have faith." Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they came to the home of the synagogue leader, and there was such a commotion, weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, "What is all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead. She's only asleep." The crowd laughed at him, but he made them all leave, and he took the girl's father and mother and the 3 disciples. And they went into the room where the little girl was lying. Holding her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, get up." And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. They were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone what had happened, and then he told them to give the little girl something to eat. God bless.
My